first we're going to start with 2-3 books, level 3. Oh my god, the camera's shaking because someone's just rubbing their chin. So, oh, just shaking the box. Hey guys, welcome back to another video. I'm here in front of a live studio audience. Like really wants to be pet right now. I am doing my end of the year videos right now, and I have a few in mind, but I was like, why not start with the one that's the most fun? And that one is going to be my least favorite books of 2020. Now, there's some discourse over saying best, worst, least favorite, and I don't remember which one I appealed to more. So for accuracy's sake, I'm going to say my least favorite book. So who am I to say best or worst, even though these were my worst books of the year? And for some clarification of what that means, not all of these books were like published or written this year. In fact, I don't think any of them were. These are just books that I got to this year. And honestly, the year's not over. I'm still trying to do that final stretch for about 5 more books. But I'm being very selective, and I doubt these are going to be below a 3-star. And all my least favorite books this year are ones that are less than 3 stars, but I will include 2 that are 3 stars just because I had to round up. And so I feel like, by the way, my star counts out of 5. So I feel like some warrant being put in my least favorite, even though I technically would put them at a level of which there were books I really did like, even though I gave them 3 stars. So I'm going to go in reverse order as far as saying the ones that I liked, I didn't like, to ones I outright despised. So the first book we're going to talk about is The Other Westmore. It is, it's called The Other Westmore, One Name, Two Fates by Westmore. And this book was selected as a common reader. A common reader, for those that may not have a university that does this, is a book or a text chosen that many people in the school read, but it's targeted towards freshmen, and that text is integrated in their coursework, their core coursework. This is things like their history, 1301, English or Comp 1, sometimes a science class, and they do assignments, and there is usually university programming to have a dialogue with this text or the themes within the text. Okay, if the book has been adapted into a film or a TV show, they might show it as part of an event. For the 2021 year, my university announced that this was the book. Now, I'm not a freshman, I am in my final year of graduate school, but I had never read a book alongside the university, so I was like, now's the time to do it. I came in as a transfer student at a community college, so it took me like almost 1 or 2 years at my current university to understand what that was. And then I read a few of the books in the past, and I was like, man, I wish I was a part of the dialogue because they brought the author. This summer, little extra bored, I read this book. So the premise is that there's 2 Westmores that grew up within a short distance of each other, that grew up and had very different lives. We have the author stated, I'm pulling this from Wikipedia, but I did read the book, so it's just a refresher. The author stated, the other Westmore is a drug dealer, a robber, a murderer. I'm a Rhodes Scholar, a White House Fellow, a former Army officer, yet our situations could have been easily reversed. And so throughout this book, he kind of goes through the lives of him and the counterpart Westmore, and this was done through a series of interviews, research, self-reflection for his own parts, and it was a very good idea, but I feel poorly executed. Number one, he did state that he did not want to glorify what the other Westmore did. However, you could be a little bit more empathetic to the circumstances that get somebody to that point without glorifying them, and I feel like he really struggled to find that balance. Not only did he do that, he chided is the wrong word. He repeatedly, I believe, reminded the reader how the other Westmore was not a reliable source, and he had his own bias against him because apparently he had never admitted to certain crimes that were apparently that he for sure did do. So, or I should say allegedly, I'm talking about real people here. And because he didn't believe him and couldn't corroborate some of the stories he would tell, the incarcerated Westmore, he just brought them up in the book, brought up that there were things, but he's not going to tell them because, that man is not to be trusted. And that's understandable. However, the way that this book was pitched was not where one person holds this like power over another person and is choosing their stories. Despite one being obviously a less reliable source, the other Westmore, the incarcerated one, will never get to tell his story. And this is coming from someone who really values honesty. I would not like if the other person lied, but I also don't like someone thinking that he's better than the other one and then refusing to tell it. Like, if you can't give his perspective, then don't talk about him when you're pitching the book as between y'all two. I'm actually getting kind of heated thinking about this, but that was one of the problems I had with the book, and it was a major one. And the other one, which they're kind of related, was the attitude of, in the era of bootstrapism, like pull yourself up, I could do it, you could do it, that the writer Westmore had in this book. And part of it, I'm not very surprised, because like I read that quote a second ago, he has led a very successful life and went through his success through the military. And so the kind of service angle and the way that our country's values lie, it was like that on steroids with his analysis of his own life versus the other Westmore. And I did not like that at all. I feel like you could be a little bit more fair and still have that. So politics-wise, I disagreed with this guy on some fundamental things. That was very hard to get through, on top of him controlling the narrative because, he was the author. So that was one book I didn't like, but I still gave it a 3 because I felt like his writing was good and it was very interesting. It's just, I struggled in the last part, but I was like, I'm almost done. I just need to finish the book. It was very disappointing that my university chose that book, especially considering the last few years, the books and the ideas and the topics have been so nuanced and interesting to then go to here. Yeah, that's all I'm going to say about that. The next book that I also gave 3 stars, but that I felt should be included in my least favorite books of 2020, the most defining moments in Black history, according to Gregory. Okay, let me tell you what I liked about this book first. This book was funny, very extreme, but funny. And when I was almost done with the book, I went ahead and looked up some stuff about Gregory. Number one, I knew nothing about him going in. It was just kind of like, I think this was like the first book I started or read this year. Well, let me check. Yeah, it was the first book I completed this year. And then after that, I was like, maybe I should start looking up things about the author other than their gender and race before I read a book, especially for nonfiction. Despite how funny and insightful the book was, it kind of felt like your conspiratorial uncle was talking to you, but like the fun one, the one that when he says something, your parent is like, don't listen to them. What I didn't like about this book and why I wanted to give it a 2.5 because of that. So there was some stuff in the book that was factually inaccurate, or he would kind of like lead you on. He'd be like, funny story, antidote, tinfoil hat time, and like he's talking about Black history, so obviously there's some aspects of it that people have said are conspiracies and then they turned out to be true. So stories are really easy to imagine, what if it happened this way, and they're equal level of insanity, but one's real and one's not. And it's really hard to blame specifically older Black and brown people it's hard to blame them and the conspiracies that they believe in when things like the Tuskegee experiments happened and other things However, it was just too much. It really put a damper on the book for me. It's like a book that I would only recommend to somebody if they already knew a lot about Black history. It is not an intro guide. Please do not read this if you don't know jack shit. In fact, I would say, unless you have a vested interest in Black history and have read several books from a diverse array of authors, and by diverse, I don't just mean ethnicity and race and nationality, I do mean gender as well, specifically of Black American history, I would not pick this up. But if you have, it might be fun for shits and giggles. It's just, I don't think that most people are there, so I don't even feel like I'm there, and I was able to catch some red flags. And yeah, it was a messy book. But you know what? I just gave it 3 stars. So let's get into the bad ones, okay? Our 3 2s and 2 1s. So Stormrise by Gilliam Boheim. I believe that's how you pronounce their name. This is a fantasy YA series. I could not tell you what happened in that book. I could tell you there's dragons, and I believe there's some sort of spirit transfer. I'm not 100% positive. This book was meh, but the reason it went from meh to I didn't like it was because of expectations I have for the book that were not met. And this is going to be a theme of a way that a book will be knocked down for me. I was specifically looking for high fantasy. It could be YA, but fantasy, straight up, not urban fantasy, where there's 2 worlds and they're set next to each other, just like similar to Harry Potter or Percy Jackson and the Olympians. But fantasy where every part of it is fantastical and fantasy, and I wanted it to be one book. Okay, because I'm in the middle of Game of Thrones, I'm in the middle of this, I was trying to finish the Inheritance Saga by Christopher Paolini, and I just needed a one and done. There's also series I've been really wanting to read, like the Poppy War series, the one that N.K. Jemisin has. She actually has 2 big series. And I just was like, I don't have the capacity. This is in January, mind you. Actually, no, was this January? No, this is like in the middle of the summer, my bad. I don't have the energy to start something and then school start, and then I'm just screwed because I don't have time to finish it. So I wanted a one and done. I wanted high fantasy, which is a lot to ask for, I guess. And I wanted a woman of color main cast. That's it. Magic is cool. Oh, and I wanted dragons, but a dragon was on the cover, so like it did not disappoint there. But what I got was this kind of sort of retelling of Mulan, kind of sort of all white fantasy. Definitely not urban fantasy. It was more standard fantasy, and it was, and that made me sad. Not the fantasy part, but the fact that it didn't meet all my expectations. So it was an okay book. I probably would have given it a 3, but the fact that the story was basically a retelling of another story, but it didn't market itself like that, as well as some of the other marketing elements, which was not to the fault of the author, but did affect my experience. So I gave that book 2 out of 5 stars. Next book I read when I gave 2 out of 5 stars was Fairest by Marissa Meyer. Where do I freaking start with this book? I started reading Cinder in January, and I read through all of the Lunar Chronicles, I believe they're called. I really like the series. Each book I gave between, I think, 3 and 5 stars. I may have given them 4 and 5 stars. However, this book was not it. It was I think it was like between book 3 and 4, and it was a origin story for Lavanna, who is the main antagonist of the series. So that was exciting. The story-wise, it was okay. Like, I liked it, but the thing that I did not like was the fact that, this is not a big spoiler, because you need like a lot of information for this to be a spoiler. The fact that also this book came out years ago, so if you don't want a spoiler, you can go here, but if you do want a kind of spoiler, then just keep listening. Lavanna is a villain, and she can use glamours, which we already know about from book 1, the beginning of book 1, how the Lunars can use glamours. And glamours, for people who don't really read or watch sci-fi fantasy, is basically like appearing to look like something else. So if you've ever read the book or the comic series or played the game Fables, or Once Upon a Time, I guess, it's like you can transform to look, quote, normal. It's not quite an invisibility kind of thing. It's straight up looking like something else. Or Men in Black is a good example, actually. Even though they don't call them glamour. You will be something, but you look like something else the same species, the same whatever to another person that you're talking to. Cool. Okay? The problem I had with the way that it was used in this book is Lavana, a white woman, glamours as a black woman because she's jealous. Honestly, I believe she does it several times. I'm not 100% positive, but she does it enough to where I was like, Marissa Myers, what are we doing here? If I wouldn't have liked Cinder, the first book, so much and not been so invested in her story, I would not have finished the series after that book. Even though I understand the purpose of it, what she did was basically blackface, and the book doesn't really get into race politics that much. They instead, like many other sci-fi fantasy, take out, like, racism's gone. Racism is apparently dead, but however, we have prejudices between different species. So we have them.
Every time I'm about to say glamours, I mean lunars. Lunars.
Between humans on Earth and glamours. Humans and cyborgs, cyborgs and glamours. So they have these kind of hierarchies instead of race. And as a black woman, I can't, like, I had to suspend my disbelief a lot. And then you are going to add racist elements back in, but I'm not supposed to see it like that. I did not like it. I gave that book, which otherwise would have probably been a 3 or 4. I gave that book 2 stars and probably should have given it 1. Next book is Black Paradise. It's V. Hildebrandt, I believe, or Hillebrandt. She is a Dutch writer. This book, it seemed like I'm not projecting here. I feel like I read this somewhere, or she said it, that this book is semi-autobiographical. And this comic book, which is the only comic book I really didn't like this year, is about this German family going to, it was definitely West Africa during the 80s or the 90s because the father's job got like relocated them there. So the short story covers this family's time there and their difficulty adapting to the language differences, the cultural differences. It really shows that other different examples of microaggressions between a former colony and a Western power. I'm not going to use power in quotes, but I will say Western. That is Germany and just Europe in general. And it looked like the book, the art, number one, was cool. I liked it. Might not be some people's taste, but I thought it was cool. Probably it's saving grace of why I didn't give it a 1. The thing that lost me is that the book, it looked like it had something interesting to say about the dynamics of the story, but they played into a trope, which they still could have done, and then just ended it. Like, the twist was a trope, was a stereotype, and it happened, like, it was through a child's perspective watching this happen, and there was no self-reflection. If there was, like, 7 more pages to that story, and there was some sort of self-reflection, that would have been cool. But the fact that the book ended, I'm just like, wow, this is just a thing. I guess all black people do this, and I can't even say without spoiling the book. I kind of want to spoil it, because I don't think anybody should read it. It was just very disappointing, and the fact that this is the only thing she's written, I believe, this author, I hesitated even bringing it up because I believe it was self-published or indie published, but the level of disrespect, especially in the second half of the book, and with the big twist that she gave to the black people of Africa, Nigeria. The lifestyle comes with a nice extra. They'll have a housekeeper, a good international school, and the daughter will be able to even join a horse riding club because she really likes horses. And so it shows the drama between the family. The mother is having a hard time adapting. The daughter is. The husband is, and he's never there. And so the family support system is like crumbling, and there's these outside forces, aka the people of Nigeria, that their government is very unstable at that moment. So there's like literal danger with everybody there, white or black, and other dangers that the author decides to portray, which is black people on this pure white family. So I did not like it. I felt like it had a lot of potential and it was wasted, and that's probably why I disliked it more. 2 out of 5 stars. I looked at other reviews of this book, and it seemed like people either saw this or they didn't, because I saw a lot of like wasted potential, aka my kind of review, or oh, this book was so great, and I'm just like, just, it looked from the profile picture, certain viewers saw things wrong with it and certain viewers didn't. And we'll leave it at that. Okay, the last 2 books that I gave 1 stars this year, my least favorite books, and I'm sorry to say, despite the very interesting discussions we had about the novels, they were both books that were assigned for school. So I took a Bohemian Studies course that I really, really liked, and I did not really care for most of the books that we read, but these 2 I got through the most and didn't like. There was some that I got through more, but that I did like. But these 2 I got through, and like I said, interesting discussions, terribly racist work. Number 1, the only one I have physical because I can't find my other book, is Carmen by, I just hit myself, Prosper Marry Me. I forgot how she pronounced it. Carmen is, if you are into opera or anything like that, or music, classical music, it is based off the opera is based off this story. The stereotype of a Latin seductress wearing red that is very cunning and worldly and sexually free comes from this book. And I say Latin because it seems like adaptations of this archetype in the present few decades has really portrayed Latin as from Latin America, despite the original story being Latin as in Spain, because all the characters, I believe, are either French or Spanish or somewhere in the border region. But it's a it's a medium-sized adventure novel. In Carmen, 1845, the tale from which Bizet's famous opera was drawn, Marry Me creates the classic femme fatale who ensnares and ultimately destroys the unwary. I don't even know where to start. It was just super racist. It was very interesting to see white people be racist towards each other. Or I guess it's not really racist because they're different ethnicities. They're the same race, but for the purpose, let's say racist. Not only just be racist towards each other and it not be hinge on anti-Semitism, because usually that's where I see white people being racist towards one another, more like in classical literature. But no, they're just hating on each other, and the worldview of the people is so small. And I say that because the characters and their prejudices span the distance of not even a quarter of Texas. And to me, being in such a big state, I'm the bigotry and stereotypes and stuff are just so extreme, and they don't live that far apart. It's just baffling. This book, I can't even say, I will say, even though it's a product of its time, it's still disgusting to me. And the only good thing to come from this book, other than conversations, is good music, because I really like the music from Carmen. Even though, I don't like the story and the sexist stereotypes. They didn't create the femme fatale. Obviously, that's freaking biblical. It has been presented in religious text for a long time. Pre-Hebrew Abrahamic religions. It was just really disturbing to see tropes associated with it, like the color red and the worldly woman be this is her, it's Carmen, we're moving on from that book. And then the last book I'm going to talk about was On the Road by Jack Kerouac. I might watch the movie, but I'm never going to read this book again. I do not like the writer. I do not like the writing. I did not like the story. For a second, I was like, maybe it's kind of self-aware. But then I realized, no, that's the class talking about it. Sexist, racist, misogynistic. I may have missed it. It may have been transphobic, honestly. I don't remember. I really don't want to think about this book. My friend Emily saw on Instagram that I was showing my reading catalog. She's like, I too would have given On the Road 1 star out of 5. On the Road, I also read in my Bohemian Studies class, and it was only interesting in a way that you got to see this appropriative nature of counterculture in a more modern sense. So appropriative nature, I mean by counterculture has always been the punks, saying slurs, bohemian people, the Romani, etc., right? So in this book, it was more of the Romani Eastern European, but even though it's Southern vibe, Spanish exoticizing, and in On the Road, it was the Beat Generation, so it was the same concept but with different people. So they came in and out of black spaces, of queer spaces, in and out of indigenous and Latinx spaces, taking it and just being very disgusting along the way. So did not like On the Road, 1 star. I hope you enjoyed this video, even though I am leaving it kind of bad, but I'm glad it's over. I feel like this year, since I started rating my books, I did give the worst ratings this year. In 2019, I gave 2 things 2 stars, nothing 1 star, and a bunch of 3s. And the 2 stars were for volume 5 and 6 of Y the Last Man. I love that series, but I don't know what the heck they were doing in 5 and 6. This is out of 10. But this year I had a lot more 1s and 2s. Proportionally, I read more books that I liked this year. The ones that I hated, boy did I hate. If we get 20 plus views on the next 2 or 3 videos, I will go ahead and do another one that'll be a little bit longer and less edited down, showing my reading statistics for the year. In early January, I will be putting out my goals for 2021. I have them almost fine-tuned. I'm super excited. If you liked my video, please hit the like button right there, I think, and hit subscribe. That way you can be notified when I upload new ones. Since it's the end of the year, I will be doing my favorite or / the best nonfiction of the year, as well as fiction. Thought about doing a separate video just for comics, but instead I want to just put fiction comics with fiction books and nonfiction comics with nonfiction books. I feel like that's a little bit more fair. It gives a respect to comics and graphic novels. I will see you next time.